If you love liberty, declare your independence by signing the Shire Society Declaration at shiresociety.com.
Good morning, and thank you all for coming out. I'm Darrell W. Perry, the chairman of the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire. The Libertarian Party of New Hampshire is the third largest and fastest growing political party in New Hampshire, and one of 3 ballot qualified political parties in the state. Being ballot qualified will save us countless hours and countless dollars getting our candidates on the ballot in 2018. And for the first time in nearly 2 decades, the Libertarian Party will be on equal footing in regards to ballot access as their Republican and Democratic Party counterparts. 3 months ago, the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire held a press conference inside the Legislative Office building across the street, and we welcomed Caleb Dyer to the Libertarian Party. 3 months ago, we announced that for the first time in nearly 20 years, the New Hampshire General Court would have a Libertarian state rep serving the majority of his term as a Libertarian. 3 months ago, I said I hope that by 2018, the New Hampshire legislature will once again have an officially recognized Libertarian caucus. Now today is another historic day. Today marks only the second time in 45 years that the Libertarian Party has welcomed a sitting Democratic state rep to the party. The other state rep that was a sitting Democrat to join the Libertarians was the late Steve Valancourt, who in 2000 joined the Libertarian Party and was elected as a Libertarian to the New Hampshire legislature in that 2000 election. Today marks the second time this year that a state representative has joined the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire. Today also marks the first time in nearly 2 decades that the New Hampshire General Court will have a Libertarian caucus with Representative Dyer serving as the floor leader of that caucus. I look forward to this caucus growing and hope that more classic liberals and civil libertarians in the General Court will join the Libertarian Party and defect from the 2-party system, and I look forward to liberty in our lifetime. Please welcome Mr. Arvind Vora, Vice Chair of the National Libertarian Party.
My name is Arvind Vora. I'm the Vice Chair of the Libertarian National Committee. It is an unbelievable honor for me to be here today, to be part of this historic moment. What we see here is one of the youngest caucuses probably in the world that has established itself here in New Hampshire with certain principles. And when I look at the future, here's what I see. I see a group of people that's going to put reality above illusion. These are people who are going to put liberty above paying lip service to liberty. These are people who are going to put people above pretending to put people first. These are people who are not going to be distracted by minor non-issues, but rather people who are going to fight for our most sacred and our most fundamental rights. During the last months, I've gotten to know more about what's happening here. I've gotten to know Representative Dyer, gotten to know some of the great things that are happening over here. And it is without question that I can say that New Hampshire is once again becoming a bastion for civil liberty, for economic liberty, for human liberty. And as we look to the coming years, we look to the millennial generation, we look to the future of America, we can very easily see that this is a generation, that this is a group of people that is tired of the old-fashioned politics, that is tired of pretend politics, that is ready for real politics, for the real politics of liberty, for the real politics of defending individual rights, for the real politics of defending and protecting individual dignity. It is with great honor that I introduce Representative Caleb Dyer.
Good morning. It pleases me greatly to stand before you all today to officially welcome Representative Stalcup into the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire. Just a few months ago, as I was preparing to leave the Republican Party, I was in a very similar position to the one Joseph finds himself in today. The leadership of the party I was a member of was either actively or passively opposing the majority of my efforts. I felt essentially hopeless that the priorities I brought to Concord for my constituents would ever be fairly heard by the House. I was slowly beginning to realize that I was not so much expected to do the job I believed I had been sent here to do, but rather act as a pawn for an agenda that had been predetermined for us. I then concluded that there were severe, irreconcilable differences between my own principles and those of the party, and thus I made the choice to leave. Many people took my choice to mean that I was not serious about the job I was sent to do. Many believe that I made the switch to attract attention and gain notoriety. Had that been the case, we probably wouldn't have scheduled the press conference during one of the worst snowstorms of the season. My switch was not a symbolic gesture, nor was it an exercise in signaling virtue to the libertarian-leaning members of the Republican caucus. I truly meant what I said in February when I proclaimed, "I believe that it is time to demonstrate to the people of New Hampshire that such a duopoly of partisan interest, which presently controls this House, is not in their interests." I have not had to demonstrate this, as anyone who cares to examine the General Court will surely find that the priorities of the dominant parties do not match their own. I think that most people have already figured out that the partisan duopoly is a sham, but they are confused and frustrated and do not know how to proceed in seeking systemic rectification. I wanted to set an example and show my colleagues and my constituents that they have nothing to fear by declaring their independence from their party, joining together, and establishing a movement to meaningfully challenge their grasp on power. We must meet those who wish to use the mechanism of the state to control the lives of their fellow men here in this court and fight like hell to end their reign. Ultimately, it is not our goal to simply acquire the power they possess and use it for our own purposes, but rather diminish it until people no longer have to pursue liberty, but instead experience it by default. I'm truly humbled to stand before you today and inform you now that we now have another representative who has answered that call and is willing to help me mount this challenge. Through my discussion with Joseph, I have found in him a truly bright and caring man. He has proven he has the courage to think and act for himself, even when surrounded by people who urged him to remain uninquisitive and follow the herd. He had the initiative to go to the Dakota Hills when he saw his fellow man subjected to violence by the state at the behest of corporate interest. He had the audacity to challenge and vote against the ill-conceived positions of the Democratic Party with regards to firearm licensure, civil asset forfeiture, and local control. But most importantly, he had the fortitude to persevere, not lose hope, and make a decision that, although a difficult one, proved his unwavering commitment to the classically liberal principles that have made this state such a wonderful place to live. Today, following this conference, Representative Stalcup and I will head to the office of the House Chief of Staff and formally request to schedule a room in the Legislative Office Building for the purpose of holding our partisan legislative caucus. As the new floor leader of this caucus, I plan to keep our doors open to any and all legislators who find themselves in a similar situation to where we found ourselves. The Libertarian Party welcomes all who have the courage and conviction to live and think freely. I will again leave you with the following words quoted from our state's Constitution. Whenever the ends of our government are perverted, public liberty is manifestly endangered, and all other means of redress are ineffectual. The people may, and of right, ought to reform the old or establish a new government. The doctrine of non-resistance against arbitrary power is absurd, slavish, and destructive to the good and happiness of mankind. Thank you.
Mark Twain once said, "Sometimes I wonder whether the world is being run by smart people who are putting us on, or by imbeciles who really mean it." I say both. The way it seems to work up here You're either rising the political ladder or taking orders from those who are. When you're relegated to being a foot soldier, for those that view the phrase, vote your conscience, akin to bless your heart, is it a surprise why I stand here today? My experience was a Cinderella story in reverse. Coming in as a classical, starry-eyed liberal, I was invited to somewhat pricey banquets where people would show little interest in you until they recognized who you were. The clock, however, struck midnight as the first caucus began. Each session, I was handed a list of chores telling me what to vote on for that day. If I did my job well, I was quietly left to my own devices, but if I missed a spot, the passive-aggressive frustration I received from certain individuals was enough to make a wicked stepsister blush. On one such occasion after a vote, I remember a legislator saying to a group while in my presence that maybe we shouldn't have college students doing this job. Even up to the current days, thanks to a press leak, the mere rumors of my involvement in this transition encouraged others to deceive and interrogate me. I will not be a political prisoner and will continue to speak my mind against hypocrisy. They claim to be against casinos for fear of addiction, yet ignore the lottery's grasp on the poor. They claim to be for criminal justice, though many turned away from a bill that would close the asset forfeiture loophole. They claim to be for the protection of transgender rights, yet didn't even mark that bill as a caucus priority. This isn't a pat on the back of the other side, however, or as their record suggests, the party of gerrymandering and cronyism. For these reasons and many more, I no longer consider myself a Democrat, Republican, or truly anything beyond a concerned citizen that has seen beyond the veil of politics and found that ignorance spreads best with mascots and teams. Even the most stringent socialist must admit that in a democracy where all social programs established can be demolished with a single vote, faith in government rests on a house of cards. It is now more than ever that we need community. Instead of fighting over differences, let us work together to leave our imprint on those who need it the most. Let us define ourselves by those who we helped out of the pit of despair, instead of leaving a never-ending breadcrumb trail of products and false promises that keep them there. More than ever, let us see ourselves and our actions as the biggest factor in each other's happiness, not what lies in gilded pillars. Fred Hampton was a major proponent in setting up local voluntary programs such as providing breakfast for hungry kids, setting up community schools, and providing free access to healthcare for the impoverished. For this, he was drugged and gunned down in his sleep by the order of the same government agencies meant to protect us. While he and I view the world through different eyes, I pose his words to anyone who dares to work in the people's house. Why don't you live for the people? Why don't you struggle for the people? Why don't you die for the people? Thank you. Woo!
All right, and with that, we're going to head up.
Representative, will you take any questions from the audience?
Yeah.
Are there any questions?
Any at all?
Seeing none, thank you. And
Feel at home.
Yes, for the first time.
our Libertarian Caucus will now go formally request a room for the Libertarian Caucus.
We'd like to invite you to visit freekeen.com. Freekeen.com features audio, video, and blogs chronicling the transition to a voluntary society. Freekeen.com also has comments and discussion forums so you can be heard. Freekeen.com.
I should be in Keene, New Hampshire with the Free Staters.